Hey guys, tonight on the Cover One Buffalo show, we will be talking about our reaction to the Buffalo Bills Denver Broncos preseason game, going over what to expect at Cutdown Day, and much, much more. But first, our guys with Handsome Jack.
Broadcasting live to Bills Mafia worldwide with Greg Tompsett and Aaron Quinn.
Welcome to the NFL.
Doesn't matter what's happened before today. Today's a brand new day. It's a brand new season.
Your number one podcast for objective Buffalo Bills coverage. No matter where you are, we got you covered.
Good evening and welcome to the Cover One Buffalo podcast. You are joining your host, Greg Tompsett, along with my partner in crime, Aaron Quinn. Aaron,
Yo.
It was nice to see you.
It was nice to see you in real life. Very hot Denver Broncos Bills game, but it was
and
good
the
to
temperature
see.
too.
Yeah, and also the temperature side. No, it was great to see you in real life. Meet your daughter in real life as well, and your parents. Very cool to meet some of the family and get to see them in real life, not just in the chat room or on Facebook. So I really appreciate that you organizing all that and getting everybody together, man.
Yeah, it was fun. I had a great time. Obviously, couldn't ask for a better first experience for our kids. My daughter, your son, my nephews.
My son was a little annoying, but yes, otherwise good.
Being able to have them go and watch touchdown after touchdown
Yes.
after touchdown. They got to hear the shout song all night. We actually got for the second half, we sat in some pretty good shaded seats. It got a little sunny there at the beginning, but it was great. It was a really
My kid
good
got a little
experience.
greedy. We only stayed the first half, and he saw what? Like there's 3 touchdowns or
Four.
something?
Four
touchdowns in the first half. And I was like, all right, we'll leave at the half. And he's like, well, hold on, let him get one more touchdown. I was like, whoa, geez, like calm it down a little bit, buddy. Don't bite off more than you can chew. He wanted more.
I respect it.
I get it.
So for everybody joining here, our guy Brett Kollman's going to be jumping on in just a minute here. Just sent me a message. He's going to be jumping on with us here in a minute. But we thought we'd go over a little bit of the news of the day before we jump in with Brett. Obviously, from the game, honestly, it was really hard to ask for more. It was a really positive day across the board. Every player wasn't perfect, but right. I don't know that anyone was terrible or bad or stuck out in a significantly negative fashion. There were some questions about who played what number of snaps and in what order, and that might come up later on our 53-man countdown discussion. But, obviously the offense was clicking right off the bat. The defense was looking pretty good. There wasn't a whole lot from anything there. And any major takeaways from the game?
The Bills are awesome and super deep.
They're really good.
They're really good. No, honestly, it's really been the story of the preseason. And I won't lie to you guys. It's the one thing that's got me super nervous right now is really how perfect this summer has laid out for the Buffalo Bills. Since that 13 seconds, I keep saying it, since that 13-second debacle, nothing has gone wrong for the Bills since. Like, really good offseason. You get Von Miller, like a fantastic free agent. You have a really good free agency. You have a very good draft. This summer has gone great. I took those 2 weeks off in the middle of summer where you should be getting constant news, and I really didn't miss anything. It was like a couple guys coming back from injury, guys performing to at least their expected levels, if not exceeding. To your point, we really haven't even had these conversations of people just really not meeting even their expectations or struggling in training camp, any of that stuff. So it's almost too good to be true, the situation that we're in. And this game was kind of a microcosm of the offseason so far in general, where just everything went right. The starters were playing. I had anxiety about that. I didn't like the starters being in. You saw me in real life. I didn't like it. And the first offense played so good and so perfect that Josh Allen got to sit after that drive. I mean, it's all going to plan, knock on wood. Exactly. Knock on that sweet, beautiful mahogany behind you, because that's the one thing keeping me up at night is this just still feels too good to be true. It's all going too well according to plan right now.
Yeah, you're not wrong. Taylor, just a quick shout out. Anybody who sees Kate at 716 Transplant on Twitter, she custom makes all kinds of cool tie-dyed stuff. She made this awesome sweatshirt for me. Sweet custom.
Thanks for keeping me in the dark on that one. Awesome.
Well,
appreciate that. Thanks.
I like to hoard. He said it right here. I like to hoard all the cool.
You did. You hoarded it, man.
I got my custom baseball jersey. I got everything. It's not special if everybody has it.
Right.
So a couple last things here. We did see some transactions to get down to the cut down line. So obviously, the two that weren't a surprise, Matt Hawk was let go. Respect to him, was very genuine. Everything you heard was how positive he was around Matt Araiza, working with him from a holding standpoint and being just a good teammate as they go through those things. I think that's all you can really ask for from that standpoint. And then
even a step above for Hawk, my thing was he made it, while it wasn't a legit competition, he added a level of pressure at least to perform. He had a very nice camp. The days we were there, he had a good time. He had some good punts in the games, and you saw that pay off. And
I was just going to say,
picked up.
Yeah, as why is adding here, he was unemployed literally for one day.
For a day.
He was signed today by the Indianapolis Colts. So
perfect scenario for the Bills. How that really sort of masterful by Brandon Beane to bring him in as insurance. You still draft the guy, and to your point, mentors him in the holding, perfect teammate, and applies the pressure to him this summer to make sure that job was solidified. Everything went according to plan there. Kudos to Beane, kudos to everybody, and good luck to Hawk going forward.
Yeah, one last transaction here. Cody Ford was traded. Obviously, one less name to shuffle around. That we're going to end the show tonight with our 53-man countdown. But a little bit of a surprise. A lot of debate over the recency of, hey, it's great to recoup a draft pick for a guy you were going to cut. It doesn't change the fact that obviously he never lived up to his second round value of where he was picked, but a positive thing altogether that we ended that with getting a pick for a guy that probably wasn't going to make the team.
Yeah, I think the best thing is you saw Brandon Beane come out and take the blame, put it fully on himself and talk about the process of how he's looking at these prospects and why that happened and trying to learn from that mistake and admitting that it was a mistake. I think, they don't owe us anything in these press conferences, but it is cool when they take the responsibility and own it publicly. I'm cool with that. But for him to also cut those losses and get something for it and get a 5th round pick, really, I didn't see that coming. When I saw it, I perked up a little bit. Hopefully it's a win-win for both teams, and Cody Ford goes on to have a nice career with Arizona, and I hope it works out for him. But I'm happy that they got something for Cody Ford versus getting nothing for him.
And obviously Brandon Beane got the same for Cody Ford that Bill Belichick got for Shaq Mason. So those are two equal things. Shaq Mason and Cody Ford, two equal players. So one last thing before we bring on our man Brett Kollman here. You saw Steve here jumping aboard. That's awesome. Steve actually is a championship level barbecue chef. He's won multiple barbecue competitions, sends me all kinds of awesome steak pictures. It gets me going crazy. He is now signed up for our One Pass subscription, is now a premium member and premium subscriber. You can do that.
You can do it too
by joining and going over to cover1.net, cover1.football, be able to jump in there. Cover1.net brings you all the different information. So many good things you can do. Private videos. I did my own Salary Cap 101 series. Eric did an entire glossary of all the football terms and scouting terms that you hear. All kinds.
I might
of
do one on how to find an adequate cornerback to root for. I'm working on it. It's in
how you narrow down your list.
Yeah, exactly.
But all kinds of great things you can do. Plus awesome gear that you'll get each season, a Cover One t-shirt, Cover One decal, access to our Slack channel, which is fantastic, where so many other people come from. So if you want to find the best way to support us and to show your support for all the hard work that we put in to bring you guys good content, this is the best way. Sign up to be a One Pass subscriber.
And it's $57 for the year because
Super Bowl
57, baby. That's where we're going, right?
That's right.
Come on, get on the train.
All right. Without further ado, jumping on our man Brett Kollman. Brett, how we doing, brother?
What's on, dude?
I'm doing great. Apologize for the mic issues. Apparently, I was very lucky that I had a second Focusrite audio interface in my house and not just one. So
I apologize for not adding a second N at the end of your name on our graphic tonight. That is my bad. I actually knew that it was the case and still messed that up. So I apologize to you, sir.
It's the most German possible spelling of Kollman. So I'm used to it. Believe me.
So, for anyone who isn't familiar, make sure you're checking out. You see the graphic on his hat. Brett has a killer YouTube channel.
Stuff.
Awesome content. The Film Room, some of my favorite stuff. So a couple of those shows we might get into later. You'll see them in our show description here. But we want to start, Brett, really, Aaron and I talk all the time. We're so in the weeds on the team. It's easy for us to kind of lose the forest from the trees on expectations. And this is new for us. We're not used to being rooting for a team that is, the betting Super Bowl favorite, and USA Today picking them to go 15-2. That's just foreign territory for us. So we want to get a feel for, from the outside looking in, before we get into a couple of your favorite players, what are your expectations for the Bills season? If after seeing how things ended and where it went, what do you expect coming in with this kind of roster they put together?
Well, I got bad news for you because I picked them to win the Super Bowl too. So that's my expectation. I mean, how could it not be? You look at the roster and you can't find a weakness. Like, they had a couple things to work on going into this offseason, and then they did, and everything's good now. Like, I literally can't find anything wrong. Like, I look at the Chiefs and I can find definitely some things to nitpick, especially when it comes to depth. I can nitpick some things with the Chargers. I can nitpick things with, pretty much any AFC contender to a degree. I can't find anything wrong with the Bills in terms the power structure, like coaching staff, front office, quarterback, elite, tons of weapons, offensive line, super underrated, defense, rock solid. Like, sure, if they sustain injuries, maybe they could slow down, but this has also been one of the healthiest teams in the league because of all the work that the Pagulas have done in terms of investing into sports medicine and sports science for this organization. So I picked them to win the Super Bowl because the odds makers are correct. If you're going to bet on anyone to do it this year, it's going to be Buffalo.
Now, this is something I was thinking about a little bit today, because I'm still having a hard time, like Greg said, kind of wrapping my head around how, since that Kansas City game, just how the whole world and the national media has just turned into a love affair with the Buffalo Bills and what they can do in this season. Can you remember? Because I feel like every year it's a handful of teams getting this kind of talk. And maybe I'm a homer and just hyper-focused on the Bills, but it feels like most consensus is just it's the Bills, and then who's going to kind of compete to slow them down. Have you seen a team run away with the consensus like this in a long time? Maybe the Bucks when Brady arrived, but anyone else stand out to you?
I would say the Bucks for sure when Brady first got there, because everybody knew you plugged him in, they were going to win a Super Bowl, and then they did. Right. But I think the reason why so many people, especially after that Chiefs game, jumped on the Bills bandwagon was because they know that if the coin flip went the other way, they probably would have won it last year. Yeah. If we're being honest, they probably would have won it last year. So it was literally a coin flip that I think made, unfortunately, the biggest difference in their season. And this year, I err on the side of the other side of that coin. So, again, statistically speaking, will they win it? I mean, even the Super Bowl betting favorite going into the year rarely wins it.
Right.
Yeah, I think it's like
18%. It's still hard to win a Super Bowl.
It's rare, but even then, if I was going to put down $100 on anything, I'd rather do it on Buffalo than any other AFC contender.
Sure. Before we go into specific players, we're kind of talking about that. What are some of the biggest areas of concern? If we are talking worst case scenario, what's the spot that would hurt the most if it was an injury? What is maybe an area of concern that you could see as a challenge?
I feel like for 3 years in a row now, I've constantly beat the drum that if Matt Milano gets hurt, there's going to be problems. And to a degree, I still believe that. I do still think that he's low-key, one of the most important players on this team. But if the Terrell Bernard hype is real, I think a big reason why that pick was so important is because maybe that can help them kind of weather that storm of if Milano gets hurt again, because he does have durability issues. But in the past, I've definitely seen not just the run defense, but in terms of it's a very zone heavy team in terms of how they match up with teams in zone. Like, a lot of it has been built around Matt Milano being Matt Milano. So if he stays healthy, they're going to be fine. But if he gets hurt again, there will be problems. And I think run defense could potentially be an issue again. But again, other than that, it's tough.
I feel like that's also like
wrong.
a Taron Johnson statement at the same time, where like if Johnson, like the depth feels similar to me, where it's like, I like Cam Lewis, but can he sustain for a stretch where you can still play that base defense that they want, right?
Yeah, and this is a team that, God, they were nickel super high
All the
percentage
time.
of the time. But they could get away with doing it because of who their nickel is and who Milano
And
is,
Milano, right.
But if those two guys go down, the defense changes completely. And, I know they have a lot of other talent around them, but those two guys are kind of the straw that stirs the drink.
Enables what they can do, right?
Of course, yeah.
I was just
Thanks,
hyping
Trez.
up my hoodie game earlier, and Trez, for anybody who doesn't see it, Eric actually
got
had
some.
one of the
Yeah.
the play design hoodies are fantastic. Make sure you're checking those out over at the film room.
Oh, I got you know what? I should have worn one. I got a whole bunch of my closet.
I gotta up my hoodie game here. You guys are gonna show me out here.
I have more Bills hoodies than any other team. I got a Dawson Knox hoodie. I got I'm still
We're hoping that some more plays make it this year into your arsenal.
I'm trying to find that Johnson pick 6 in the playoffs.
I know it very well. Yeah.
I'm trying to find a way to do that one correctly. Defensive plays are a little bit harder.
Oh, it's a good play.
Like
so while Johnson, big stan, I've been waving my flag for that guy for a long time. A guy that we're gonna let you wave your flag for a little bit here, Khalil Shakir. I'm just gonna I'm not even gonna make any introductions to it. Just tell us why he's Robert Woods 2.0, and I'll give you the floor.
That's actually not a terrible comp, because Robert Woods is kind of Mr. Everything, I would say, for football, and it was like that way in Buffalo.
And sneaky athletic. People don't realize how athletic and smooth Robert Woods is. He just doesn't look it.
How do people not remember that Woods ran 4.4 coming out of college? Like
he doesn't look it. It's the way they play. They don't. It just doesn't look as athletic.
But when the day he was taken, or no, I think it was like 3 days after he got drafted, I tweeted out, like, I cannot believe they let Josh Allen get Khalil Shakir in the 5th round. Because what was the one thing that I could complain about the skill position group last year? Yards after catch.
That's it.
They didn't have a whole lot of it. And like, not that Diggs can't do it, but that hasn't been his game as much as it being like a true deep threat down the field,
comeback
great route runner, all that kind of stuff. And Cole, obviously, that was never Cole's game. He's either. They really needed a yak threat where it's like, okay, if we're just getting capped over the top, dump it off to somebody and see what they can do with it. And so I made a whole film room episode about how he's gonna be their own version of Debo, because that's what he can do. He's exceptional after the catch. You can line him up in the backfield every now and then, and do some, not all of the Debo type stuff, because they run freaking inside zone with Debo. You're not going to do it with Shakir, but like, you can still do some run game stuff with him too, and just screw with defenses by putting Cook out in the slot, because Cook can be a slot, and then you put your slot in the backfield, and you could still roll with that and do a whole variety of things. So I did a whole episode on that, because I thought that was honestly like their most home run pick in the whole draft, which how often can you say it about a 5th rounder? And I've been banging that drum since May that he was going to be legit. And then he got to camp, and we saw the hype, and it was building and building and building. And then we're seeing him in preseason, and he had 3 catches in a row taken away by penalties last week. Like, he's awesome. And I know that there's a lot of slot receivers there. You got McKenzie, you got a whole bunch of veterans. Shakir brings something different than all the other guys, and I think eventually that job's going to be his. He's too good not to.
And he can play outside of the slot too, right? One of the problems for the Bills' depth heading into camp was there was nobody. If a Davis or a Diggs goes down, there's nobody on that boundary in that depth chart, because they really went heavy with these slot guys, with Crowder, McKenzie, and even Shakir. And with Shakir being able to have that versatility, that makes me at least feel a lot better where if something happens. And his progression this preseason, that I feel like he could step in and at least be serviceable outside boundary receiver.
I also had an interesting tweet over the offseason that if you look at the Bills receiving core, like, they're arguably the best in the league, top to bottom. You got an elite number 1 in Diggs. You got a top tier number 2 in Davis. You got a whole bunch of slot guys. You got Khalil Shakir. The highest drafted guy in this receiving core is Crowder, who's like a 4th round pick.
Right?
Yeah. Gabe Davis, 4th round. Stephon Diggs, 5th round. Isaiah Hodgins, 6th round, fighting for a spot. McKenzie, 5th round. I remember he was a picked by the Broncos, I think 5th round, and then waived and claimed. So waiver claim. Yeah, it's crazy to have. And when you juxtapose that with the Bills have such a tendency for big freaky athletes at other spots, Josh Allen, Ed Oliver, Tremaine Edmonds, Spencer Brown, Gregory Rousseau, like just big, huge, freaky athletes. One of the spots where plenty of teams want DK Metcalf and AJ Brown and the Kelvin Johnsons, and we have a bunch of day 3 quick little guys running around, and they've somehow turned it into one of the most dangerous receivers
outside of Diggs, who was certified legitimate wide receiver when he arrived to Buffalo. A lot of it I think has to go to credit to Chad Hall in developing some of these guys, and you've seen the development of your Gabe Davis, and now Hodgins coming along this preseason. I think he's going to do some good things with Shakir, so it's a nice room for young receivers to be a part of, because it's a talented room and they're all seeming to develop here in Buffalo.
And boy, it helps when your quarterback's Josh Allen.
Yeah, right. Everything's nicer. Fun? Everything's just a little nicer.
That fun. It's just we were joking. So Aaron and I were there at the Broncos game this weekend, and the highlight, the touchdown where he kind of does the little okey doke and spins around and be like, oh look, there's Gabe Davis 40 yards down the field. I'm flat-footed and can't step into it. Let me just flick the ball to him, and it's unbelievable. It's just it's so fun to have a guy who can do that. I don't know what to do with myself.
No.
Have you noticed that people keep we're now, I think, in the second straight year where people are waiting for Josh Allen to go back to being normal,
right? And
it's just not happening. And I think people are now realizing that, oh, he's just going to stay that way. He's just going to be that forever. He's like that.
Even that play, a local reporter had tweeted out basically cool play, but it reverted back to some of the Josh Allen stuff. But no, if you go back and look at that play, he is looking to extend that play. Palmer talked about sort of his ability to extend plays like Steph Curry, just get enough space to make a play. He's not looking to just take it down and run. He's looking to extend, and it wasn't available. He stepped back. Old Josh Allen would have kept running backwards 5-6 yards, thrown a ball in double coverage. He just stepped back, got his feet back under him, and zipped the ball. That is not old Josh Allen. That is refined, get my space and take my shot, Steph Curry, Josh Allen.
Yeah. I think as painful as it was for you guys, that playoff game against Houston was the best thing that ever happened to him. Probably. He learned a lot of lessons that day.
Yeah.
Well, and I know there's a lot of people that bring it up, but the most impressive thing for him isn't always just the crazy ones. It's that he doesn't repeat mistakes. He's so good. Joe Biscaglia talks about it a lot, that he doesn't make mistakes a second time. Things that he sees, he has a great repository for it and will physically work on it. So when you talk about the items for Yak last year, he's harped on that all offseason. Talked about timing, placement, rhythm, giving guys that opportunity with the right flow to be able to let them run with it afterwards. I guarantee we're going to see an improvement there, because he's shown a track record that when he puts his mind to improving something, he does, and it simply gets better. It's crazy.
I meant to DM you guys this a while back. So I live in Southern California, so we drive up the 5 to Northern California and back all the time. When I was up at Niners camp a couple weeks ago, and I was driving back from the Bay back down to Southern California, I noticed there was a new sign when I was driving along the 5, and it said Firebaugh, California. And I'm like, oh my God, he actually put Firebaugh literally on the map.
Literally, all the crazy Bills fans that want to go to Firebaugh
needed to go find where Firebaugh is,
and it's a couple 100 miles off the 5. It is in the middle of nowhere. Yeah. There is no reason for there to be a sign.
Well, it's Josh Allen's on
time. He literally put them on the map. That is fantastic.
He'll have a statue there by the time this is done.
Oh yeah.
Oh, easily.
It's going. So, we don't want to take up too much of your time tonight. Yeah. Let the folks know what's some of your next film rooms coming up.
So I'm working on Kenny Pickett right now. I think that one's coming out tomorrow because he's had a lot of success so far and definitely looked the part.
Busting up some narratives.
Gamer.
Exactly. He's a much different quarterback than Josh Allen, but it doesn't mean he can't be good.
Right.
So I think Steelers fans are going to be happy with him. And then I'm working on a Devontae Adams video for the week after that. And then Thursday, September 8th, I'm going to be up in LA, Bills Rams at SoFi, seeing it live.
Right.
Actually, I'm seeing 2 Bills games in the first 3 weeks of the season, actually.
Hey, you're just having a good time.
It's a top ticket in the league, man.
Yeah.
So for everybody listening, if you're not there, I was kind of hoping maybe it could happen during the show. Brett is at 99,900 followers on Twitter. Let's have Bills
Well
Mafia
deserved.
be the people that pushes him over 100,000 followers. Jump
I'm
out there.
20 away.
There you go. See 20
20
people.
away.
We can do it tonight.
Well deserved,
You are
my
going to
man.
get the notification while you're at dinner tonight. It's going to be fantastic.
That's right.
Make sure you go out there, check him out at Brett Kollman. It's awesome work. If you love this stuff that Eric does and Aaron and those guys, and Anthony and Kendall in the film room, you are going to love the work and the breakdowns that Brett does. It's fantastic. Check it out of the film room. We'll have the link here in our show notes. Thank you, man. We appreciate your time tonight.
Thank you for being flexible. Thank you to all Bills Mafia for the support. Hope to make a lot of good Bills content this season.
All right, man.
That's right. Cool. Thanks, man.
Enjoy, man.
All right. So always fun to have Brett on. So
Super cool.
Yeah, it's going to be really exciting. It's so fun to be able to have people come on the show and tell us that they picked the Bills to win the Super Bowl.
You know what? I'm gonna have to go DM him after this because Brett is a Texans fan, and I meant to congratulate him because there's so many years where it was the absolute worst franchise in the NFL for him, and I felt so bad for him after we met in the playoffs. It just derailed for them. I think Davis Mills, that's got to be at least fun for Texans fans, having come out of this terrible spell after being good for a long time and just train wrecking, derailing. And now it's okay, well, maybe we got a QB out of that draft class, and that's pretty fun. That's a fun thing.
Both you and I like to be petty here and there.
Yeah.
It's kind of got to be fun to be the team that owns Cleveland's first round pick and watch everything going on
and watch
there.
them totally.
Yeah. Just watch that go down in flames and be like, oh yeah, it's fun to have their first round pick. That's going to be great.
Yeah. When you're not playing for Lombardis, you have to just cling to the pettiness that exists in the NFL. Yeah.
So tonight, our final official topic will be our 53-man roster projections. And, we've kind of gone through this over the years. We'll probably do it position group by position group here. And before we dive in, I want to say it was a little easier than I thought it was going to be, if I'm being honest. We've talked so much about all the different moving parts and all the different things that it kind of fell in, and there are two or three guys on each side of it, on the outside looking in, and that are the last cuts, and the guys that are on there. I was surprised how well it slotted in of what I was kind of expecting from where it was, and that it was only maybe two or three tough decisions.
I don't disagree. I think we get so caught up in our own cycle of just Bills news, right? On our Twitter feeds, and that's just so much of what we consume. Even if you are somebody that consumes other NFL news, you don't view the rest of the league like we do this team. And so I think we just get really over analyzing these things, and some of the conversations that happen in the preseason about the roster, and maybe some of these things will change and I'll look like an idiot when we come down to the final cuts. But I do think when I started plotting this out, I got to 51 real quick.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And there was there's been a couple things where all right, let me think about how this could play out on the back end. But I got really right through the starters and that second level of depth, pretty easily, in my opinion, how this should play out, how I think it'll play out. And I think that's a good thing where you're not hemming and hawing through the roster. I think there's still good players that are going to get cut from this team. I think most of them will end up back on the practice squad. I'm not super worried about losing a lot of guys. There may be one or two. Some news today. I'm sure we'll get to talking about that when the time comes, of some guys that could be gone. But this was an easier exercise for me, I think. But now I'll be interested to see if we line up, because we're talking about how easy it is, and watch us not even line up here on the back half of this roster.
Yeah. So let's start on the offensive side. We'll go through the offense first, and I'll say for the first time, I'm usually pretty equal. I had more offense than I had defense for this year, in that, I'm assuming both of us had Josh Allen and Case Keenum with Matt Barkley going to practice squad.
Yes. So sorry, I was writing down the time for the show notes. Yes, it is Josh Allen and Case Keenum. And I do have Barkley on the practice squad as well. This was actually, even after the bad Case Keenum game, I never came off of that. That's been my thing all along.
Yeah. And obviously showed exactly what we talked about, that when you give him a good, a decent offensive line of skill positions, he's a functional player. It's how we went 2-0 in Cleveland last year. It's exactly what we would need for a game or two if we needed it, but super easy. Running back, I was pretty boring here as well. I've got Devin Singletary, Zach Moss, James Cook, Tywan Jones, Reggie Gilliam. I have both Raheem Blackshear and Duke Johnson on practice squad. I know, Raheem Blackshear has flashed. Everybody has seen that. So has a bunch of other RB4s all over the NFL. I like him. He's shown enough with the gunner reps that he got and the special teams reps that he got that I do see him as Tywan Jones 2.0 next year in 2023. So I actually legitimately want him on the practice squad, not just no big deal if we don't get him. I'd like him to, but not enough that I have to desperately find a roster spot for him. If he gets claimed, I'm not going to lose sleep over it, even if I do kind of like him as a utility player.
Yeah, I like the player. To your point, I think there's a lot of these guys league wide that are also going to get cut and be brought back on their practice squads. I'm not super worried that he's going to be lost. I have the room the same way. Duke Johnson, actually, I think hats off to this guy because it's just a numbers game where he's going to be the odd man out. He's actually had a pretty fine preseason. He's looked great on special teams, both in the return game. Eric posted a few of his coverage on kickoff coverage, and he looked good there too. He's doing everything he's asked. I got nothing but love for the guy, but he's going to be the odd man out, and I think they do bring back Blackshear on the practice squad. But you made the point a couple of weeks ago, and it's totally true. Tywan Jones is a roster lock for this team. The only way he wouldn't have been is if he was playing all preseason, being given an opportunity to compete for that position. They're not going to pull that out of underneath him at this point without giving him an opportunity to at least display something and compete for it.
And this last game, when Tyler Matakevich and Saran Neal and Tywan
100%.
Jones were all sitting, our coverage units were bad, and we gave up kick return and punt returns that we normally don't. It was very noticeable. Our 3 core guys were out, and then our coverage units looked bad without them. So don't get me wrong. From if you're asking me
an asset utilization standpoint,
in a perfect world, do I love one of the roster spots being Tywan Jones? Honestly, no. Do I think that it's so important to have some other guy? And we'll talk about a couple of the other guys here that are that do have better 53-man, scrimmage yard or scrimmage position potential than Tywan Jones. Yes. But do they make the team better in 2022? No. And like I ranted last week, until I have a trophy, I'm making every decision of what's the best 2022 roster. And this team is better with Tywan Jones than some of the other guys we're going to talk about.
Yeah, and I tweeted out a point here this week, and I really think it matters a lot. You have a first-time special teams coach. He's been a special teams assistant for first-time special teams coach. You got a first-time rookie punter and holder, and you're going to have a rookie most likely returning punts. And so you want as many vets that are solid special teams players as possible. And Tywan Jones is going to be like, he's a team captain. He's one of the core special teams players. This argument that he wasn't going to make the team here this summer kind of drove me nuts.
And I do think it's possible what they've been developing. Blackshear could be his replacement next year. I don't think that's crazy. I just don't think it's ready for this year.
Not this year. I agree.
Why don't you lead us off for receivers?
Receivers, actually, this one kind of for me seemed pretty easy also. Obviously, Stephon Diggs, Gabe Davis, Isaiah McKenzie. Really, I'll take my L here too. I took it on Twitter. I've been really hard on Isaiah McKenzie on this show, on Twitter. I've always said when the ball's in his hand, he has the chance to be explosive. It's always been trust issues for me, and he never did anything to solidify or change that. This summer, clearly he has run away with that starting slot job, and they are going to make him a point of emphasis in this offense. Taron Johnson actually had an interesting quote this week or today where which was kind of maybe something we hadn't really seen or heard from the media, which is he was talking about covering Isaiah McKenzie, and he talked about with the switch up between McKenzie and Crowder and how often the offense is switching those two out and what they're doing and how that makes it really difficult on a nickel corner to do. That caught my attention because I think a lot of people have seen Isaiah McKenzie's kind of running away with this job as Crowder might be an odd man out, but that made me really solidify in picking this, that I think Crowder has much more of a role in this offense still. He's still very much a part of the plan. So it's, for me, it's obviously, Diggs, Davis, McKenzie, Crowder, Khalil Shakir. We were just talking about him. And I've got Jake Kummerow, again, same as Tywan Jones to me, as close to a roster lock as you can get being at this back part of the roster.
So you've got 6 receivers.
I've got 6 with Hodgins. I have Hodgins. Well, this was before the New York Giants news. I had Hodgins and Gentry coming back on the practice squad.
Okay. So I've got 7.
Okay.
I've got Gabe Davis, Stephon Diggs, McKenzie, Shakir, Kumaro, Crowder, and I do have Hodgins making it. That didn't necessarily change because of the Giants losing Colin Johnson, but it was that some of this is, and we'll get to it with a couple other positions, some of that game theory of when you're talking about the 54th, 55th guy who has a higher likelihood of making it through waivers, where, you know, you're playing, and we'll talk about this at offensive line, we'll talk about this at linebacker, we'll talk about this at safety, some other guys who are similar value positions that I think Hodgins has shown enough that it would make sense to keep him there, because you're still going to have 5 game day inactives every game.
Has he shown enough? Like, I'm torn on this because it was the one game, right? Because previously to this offseason, we haven't seen him at all. He's been injured, hasn't been able to get healthy and play. And it was a nice game, and there was production. And there was a little bit in the Broncos game.
I was going to say, I think both of them. I would give him 2 nice games.
I would say the Broncos game was fine. I think the first game was, wow, opened everybody's eyes, got everyone talking about it. The next game was a fine game. He's had a nice preseason. I haven't watched the special team snaps. Eric says it has not been good. Great. And that is what gives me the hesitance that if he's just kind of a adequate wide receiver in the preseason, because again, a lot of teams wide receivers that are deep on their depth chart are also putting together decent preseasons. If he's adequate, but he's not good on special teams, that's a tough end of the roster spot for me to have him be a rosterable guy. So I'm interested to see how the rest of this roster plays out for you on the back end, keeping Hodgins, because I don't have him. I'm interested in this.
Yeah, we'll get to some of the battles, and it really came down to 2 players that we'll get to as it comes up here, that were my last debate of where it is. One, I just take that back. Another third player that was kind of in the running here. I'll do tight end. I have 3. I have Dawson Knox, I have OJ Howard, I have Quentin Morris, and I have Tommy Sweeney going to practice squad and getting cut.
Yeah, I have it the exact same way, and it's kind of interesting the sort of conversation around OJ Howard right now, both on Twitter and in the media, and people are just kind of down.
I got to tell you, I had 3 different beat reporters reach out to me in DM asking me to confirm how the cap ramifications would work exactly if he gets traded.
Mm-hmm.
It was too much for it not to be.
Well, there's multiple articles
discussion about that. So Doug Kayed from PFF had a report that the most improved player at Bills camp is Quentin Morris, and that it's so much so that, you know, that they think he could maybe even be kept over OJ Howard, and that they're potentially shopping him in trade talk. So we'll see where that goes. I'm curious to see how it goes. From a financial standpoint, they're not going to cut OJ Howard. They would pay just as much money to cut him as to keep him virtually. They would eat $3.195 million. A little bit of it could be spread out to next year instead of this year, but they would be eating $3.2 million if that happens. Now, trading him, they would trade the $2 million. It's $1.95 million in his guaranteed salary. They could trade that with. So it could make it a little more tolerable in that you could basically have another team buy a draft pick from us for the $1.25 million signing bonus, which isn't the end of the world. We did that. And just as an example, we did it with AJ McCarron. We signed AJ McCarron in free agency. We gave him a signing bonus. He played in preseason. He got traded to the Raiders for a 5th round pick before he ever played in a regular season game for the Bills. So there is precedent that they could trade a free agent that they just signed that spring before he ever plays in a game. So it's not unprecedented. That has never happened before. Bean has done it. I'll be a little bit surprised, more so, and we brought this up pre-show, so I'll let you comment on this as well. It's not Morris versus Howard for me. It's Howard versus Sweeney, and I would still rather have the better blocker and the bigger target.
Yeah, I agree. And I think Leslie Frazier talked about Dane Jackson being still that cornerback 2 or cornerback 1 with Trey out, and saying, you know, that they're comfortable with him and that he's a vet and he's seen things. I think that we need to take that kind of ideology really across this team when it comes to these types of battles and how we talk about them. And I think OJ Howard having legitimate snaps and Tommy Sweeney not really having ever done anything really in the NFL. And same with Quentin Morris. Like, that's cool that he's having a good preseason, but he hasn't really shown it in the NFL in a real game. And you can say whatever you want about OJ Howard, that he hasn't lived up to people's expectations of the player that we thought he would be when he was drafted or whatnot, but he's had productive NFL seasons as a tight end. He put up a 500-yard season and a close to a 500-yard season. He's also there's been a number of variable and context as to why he hasn't been productive. Injuries, the team brought in multiple tight ends, including Gronk, and he kind of found his way out of that rotation, but he's still a good, but to your point, good blocking tight end. He can be a productive tight end. He can fill in a spot for Dawson Knox. He still has the athleticism and size.
Looked good in his catches this past weekend.
He did look good in his catches. He looked good on the blocks. Eric, again, posted a bunch of stuff about that.
Caught all 3 targets plus a touchdown.
Yeah, the competition has been, in my opinion, since the start of camp for that third spot. And if Quinn Morris has had a really good camp, and we've heard that maybe Tommy Sweeney has had good practices, but we haven't seen it really translate into any of the preseason games. But we have with Morris. To me, that's what gives Morris the edge and gives him that tight end 3. But yeah, I think the competition's there. But if Brandon
and the special team snaps as well, Morris has played better. Has played more special team snaps as well.
Yeah, and whatever. There's some smoke around this trade, so I will monitor it. I've taken that information in. I'll monitor it. But in my opinion, until something crazy comes up that ticker, I think OJ Howard is very firmly the tight end 2 for this team.
Great. All right, give us your offensive line.
My offensive line. Let's see here.
I'm assuming we got the 5 starters. Those are real easy.
5 starters.
Really, I just need to know who your 9th guy is.
So yeah, I'm going with what we got: Tommy Doyle, Van Rotten, Mance, Spencer Brown, your boy Bobby Hart's making this team, and Tanner Owen.
Whew. How many do you have?
So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. No, not Tanner Owen. 10 with Bobby Hart.
Okay,
Tanner Owen on practice squad, and 10. Capra on practice squad, and Tenuta on practice squad.
Okay, so I've got 9 offensive linemen because you can't make me put him on the team. You're not the boss of me. You can't make me.
You're not going with Bobby Hart, even with all the smoke.
Practice squad.
Even with all the smoke of that, he's like a legitimate Aaron Cromer disciple now.
He's gonna. I know.
Well, here's what did it for me is the constant conversation about the versatility. And that guard is a little thin.
But he's horrible at tackle. Like, he's been good at guard. He has. Like,
guard is thin. And that's
I went back and watched it in the games. He's legitimately been a functional NFL guard. He really has. He's looked solid, and God bless Aaron Cromer for turning Bobby Hart into a functional NFL player. I just can't do it. I think the
Bills like to have a just backup center, like a guy that's if something goes wrong, he's our backup center. But I think they're going to want a little bit more versatility in that backup role, especially with Bates being a starter. Bates was that versatile. And we can plug him in anywhere outside of Bobby Hart. Who's going to be that guy?
So, I think David Quessenberry is the 6th offensive lineman at every spot. Okay. I think that if something happens to Morse,
right now he's a starter though. As of today, because
I agree
that Brown injury is like kind of just lingering.
Start everything they've been talking about. I think that this game was only like 6 practice reps days back for Brown, and that with his progression and the way Josh Allen talked about it, I'm going to assume Spencer Brown is the starter, and that even Quessenberry in his presser made comments about the way he talked about his role.
Right.
You could tell he had been told the plan, but that he was still able to compete. So it is not a foregone conclusion. I'm not saying it's a slam dunk, definitely Spencer Brown. I believe opening week it's going to be Spencer Brown, and that Quessenberry is the backup at all 5 positions because
if Bobby Hart's your inactive.
Yes, if Morris goes down, God, stop it. If Morris goes down,
I got you to say yes.
I know. Bates slides over, and Quessenberry plays left guard, left tackle, right guard, right tackle.
Yeah.
Then Tommy Doyle is the other backup tackle. Mance can do center and guard. Van Roten can do center and guard. There isn't anyone who can do guard and tackle other than Quessenberry, so there is a path. And again, Bobby Hart, I think. I haven't asked Eric directly if he thinks Hart has played better than Van Roten so far in preseason.
He said Van Roten's been solid though.
Yeah, so I clung to that. I remember him saying Van Roten's been solid, and there is a path, and this was my debate on offense, was Isaiah Hodgins versus Bobby Hart. And
Okay,
was it
so that's what we
7
flipped.
wide receivers or 10 offensive linemen? I went with, I believe from a game theory standpoint, it will be easier to get Bobby Hart back on the team. He's a vested veteran. He does not have to pass through waivers. No one can claim him.
Sure.
So, of course, if he gets offered a 53-man roster spot, every single player takes any 53-man roster spot over any practice squad, regardless of franchise. But I do believe he'd hang out on our practice squad versus anywhere else.
Sure.
And would stay. And you simply have to tell him, hey, we'll kick you a couple extra bucks to stay around. And if something happens, you're our first guy up. And he would be. He would get called up over Luke Tenuta. He would get called up over Tanner Owen. I have all 3 of them on the practice squad. I think they try to keep Luke Tenuta, Tanner Owen, and Bobby Hart on practice squad. Alec Anderson, Jacob Capra would be cut. But that was my compromise, was I think there's a higher probability of keeping Bobby Hart than hoping Isaiah Hodgins doesn't get claimed.
Gotcha. So I feel kind of weird saying this. So I'm higher on Bobby Hart.
Yes, you
and
are.
You're higher on Hodgins. All right, cool.
I'm going to record that.
Yeah.
All right. So let's flip over, which means I think we both have 26 on offense. We're both a little heavier on offense than defense. And I think that's feasible. When I did mine, I made sure to capture who could play coverage units. And I had Reggie Gilliam, Tywan Jones, Jake Kumro, Quentin Morris. And I technically put Isaiah Hodgins, even though he's bad at it. But I had 4 offensive guys who can contribute on special teams for coverage units. And that's pretty solid, not including returner stuff, which obviously Shakir and McKenzie can do.
Yeah.
All right. Why don't you kick us off? I think defensive line's one of the easiest ones. We could probably rattle off all 9 pretty quick.
Yes, I have Oliver, Phillips, Jones, Settle, Miller, Epinesa, Rousseau, Basham, and Lawson.
Yeah. I mean, I get that some people have questioned Shaq Lawson, but I think he put that to rest with his performance against the Broncos. He probably is, he was never a $10 million a year player.
No.
He's probably not even the top rotational guy. But if you tell me that other teams have a better 5th defensive end than Shaq Lawson, I don't believe you. I just don't believe you. He's still a rotation caliber, snap caliber guy, and he's probably going to be game day inactive for the Bills a handful of times because I want him there for the Titans game. I want him there for the Ravens game. Sure. I want him there for those run heavy teams.
I was going to say he plays to some of the strength. He plays to some of the weaknesses. His strengths are some of the weaknesses of the Bills defense over the last 5 years, which is a solid run defender who's not going to give up containment on the edge.
Yeah, you give me those major run snaps when it's Gregory Rousseau on one side and Shaq Lawson on the other, I am absolutely good. But yeah, keep him for those Patriots games, keep him for those Ravens games, the Steelers game.
He could be a game day inactive for a bunch of other games. That's cool too.
Yeah, against the Chiefs and some of those teams, we'll pull in and go all pass rush, but I'm good with that. And the defensive tackles are easy. I do think there are several guys that are priorities to get back on the practice squad. I think they go for Kingsley Jonathan is really interesting.
You got to get that guy.
Flashed a ton. He's one that is probably a sneaky waiver claim name just because pass rush is such a premium position that's a possibility. And I know he had a draftable grade from a handful of teams or for a lot of analysts that were out there. Mike Love is a guy that I think is very likely to be back. Yeah. Eli Ankow, Brandon Bryant, those are all guys who, if you're in a pinch and we get an injury to one of the defensive tackles, those are guys who can do a competent job and are worth keeping around in that locker room.
I agree 100%. I'm interested to see your linebacking core here because I feel like you had some debate here.
So this was my toughest one. So I joke. I didn't have that hard of a time cutting Bobby Hart. It was very fun. I enjoyed it. I let it wash over me. Linebacker was my actual hardest one. So I went with 5. And I went with, obviously, Milano, Edmonds, Terrell Dodson, Tyler Medikevich, Terrell Bernard. I think those are locks. I don't think there's any real possibility that I mean, Tyrell Dodson's good. They gave him the green dot when he's not in there. He'll have the green dot this week. He'll be the starting middle linebacker. And I think Bernard has shown enough potential that he could fight him for those reps to be the first guy off the bench instead of Dodson, but not so much that Dodson's there. I like Balen Spector. I'm intrigued. It's linebackers don't get claimed when they get. There's linebackers everywhere. Every year when you watch Hard Knocks, you see everybody's favorite, tough special teams linebacker flying around. He's flashed a little bit. He's looked good. I will fully respect if they keep him instead of maybe one of the DBs I bring up, or maybe Isaiah Hodgins. Like, that's where it's going to come down to. Or again, if we had seen Tywan Jones being closer, this is a guy who can play special teams and coverage, and this is the kind of spot that you would figure out, hey, we got to make a tough cut here. I think this is their biggest roll of the dice on, man, we're going to cross our fingers and hope he doesn't get claimed. He's probably the biggest risk for me, and that I have them releasing Balen Spector and trying to get him onto the practice squad.
So I had zero debate about this at all. It wasn't hard for me at all. And I had the same exact lineup as you. I got 5, and it's those 5. And I like Spector as well. I think he's a fine player. But to your point, I think if you go on any Detroit Lions podcast, Cleveland Browns podcast, there's going to be some.
Marco Lee was a perfectly good player, and he didn't even make it past the 80-man cutdown.
Totally. And there's going to be a lot of these guys that end up cut as well. Maybe he gets claimed. Here's my thing, Greg. It doesn't matter really anyone in the back half of this roster. Like, sure, in a perfect world, do I want the Bills to lose any potential developmental talent? No. I'm not losing any sleep over Balen Spector not coming back to the Buffalo Bills. I'm not losing any sleep over Isaiah Hodgins not coming back to the Buffalo Bills. I don't think they're going to make a significant impact as to whether or not the Buffalo Bills win the 2022-2023 Super Bowl. And that right now, I have a one-track mind, and it's all that I care about in the entire world.
Yep.
And so, bummer. I'd hate to lose them, but at the end of the day, like, you can get another Balen Spector. You can get another Isaiah Hodgins at some point. Like, receivers are very easy to draft. You can find those guys all the time. So I'm not going to lose any sleep, and I'm going to continue to build this roster. But yeah, Balen Spector's on the outside looking in. I think they'll be able to get him back on the practice squad. I feel pretty good.
Okay, I like it. Let's separate the secondary. Why don't you give me your cornerbacks?
My cornerbacks. So I am going with Kyer Elam, Christian Benford, Dane Jackson, Taron Johnson, Cam Lewis, and we're going to call Saran Neal a corner.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
And with Trey White, I'm assuming is going to be out a month of football. If he is, Nick McLeod's a safety now.
Okay.
Right.
I listed him at corner.
Okay.
But yes, he obviously has shown the versatility to play both.
He's a defensive back.
He's a defensive back, and I think he might have got more snaps at safety this last game.
Yes. So I could see him getting in the roster while Trey's not.
Yes. So I have that exact same setup. I have 6 cornerbacks. I have the 5 that are very clear: Christian Benford, Dane Jackson, Kyer Elam, Taron Johnson, Saran Neal. And then the 6th cornerback is either Trey White if he's ready, or Nick McLeod if he's not.
Right.
I do have McLeod over Cam Lewis because of the versatility. So,
although Cam played some safety,
yes, and I'm interested.
There? What's going on?
And he's, I think he almost gets penalized for the fact that he's passed through waivers the last 2 years and been called up back and forth, and nobody's claimed him. They've kind of shown that they could do that, and if he's one that would make sense for the guys who had been here for a couple years and got drafted or signed by Joe Shane or Brian Dable and then left. So, like, there's no connection with Raheem Blackshear. Like Brian Dable and Joe Shane have never seen.
Yeah, we can't lose Bobby Hart then, bro.
No. So, oh man, I can't believe we'd lose Bobby Hart to them. Oh darn. So, but guys like Isaiah Hodgins, Quentin Morris, Cam Lewis, Nick McLeod, who had multiple years, they were signed or drafted by Joe Shane. They were coached by Brian Dable. Those are the guys that I think there's at least some logical dot connecting. So Cam Lewis or Nick McLeod, whichever one doesn't win, I think it's a reasonable likelihood that the other guy, they already claimed Elijah Griffin. These guys are both better than him.
Sure.
There's a reasonable possibility that you would be able to go in and then the other one gets claimed. So I'm not going to lose sleep over which one it is. And honestly, as soon as Trey White's ready, both of them are going to be on the practice squad anyways. So,
Right. The reason I have Cam Lewis in here is the versatility of having that nickel. Yeah. Because if something happens to Taron Johnson, like they say Neal is a nickel and he can play that. And we've seen very limited reps from him. And this is a guy that I was high on a year ago that I thought was going to take that next step and be able to actually be a kind of a chess piece on defense, and he hasn't really quite taken that step. And I don't have confidence in him being able to come in and spot duty and play in that position in the NFL the way it is today, where they line up fast, speedy guys. I'd feel better about Cam Lewis being in that position. And so that, for me, you have a lot of safeties. Nick McLeod really doesn't, for me, offer something different outside of the versatility aspect that he can play outside or safety.
I'll tell you the number one thing I want to know: can Christian Benford do it?
I don't know.
He's shown so much headiness and ability early on, and that value of being that extra guy. I'd love if he showed that versatility and having, especially that frame in the box. You talk about the value Taron Johnson brings in the run defense. Having that frame and size as that nickel defender would be a huge advantage in a pinch. Not that I think
he's physical at the point of attack, and I actually meant to post that. I totally forgot. He had a really nice play and run support out on the edge.
Yep.
What I would like to see, I'd love to see him get a shot in there and see if he's got that, like, to be in the middle like that. You got to have a bit of a dog mentality, and that's what Johnson has. And I think Cam Phillips has a little bit of it. If Benford had it, then for sure that would change things for me. But I don't have that info yet, so I'm going with Cam Lewis.
There's a couple other spots like I don't think it would. I think they would lean towards wanting a Saran Neal, a Cam Lewis. I wonder. Obviously, they showed some of that 3 linebacker base set against Denver, where they had Milano, Edmonds, and Terrell Bernard. So we've seen some of that. And again, this is not instead of Taron Johnson, but if he's out, I would debate Terrell Bernard versus Saran Neal, Terrell Bernard versus Cam Lewis. I also don't think it's crazy that maybe they look at a 3 safety set where they could try to do some different things. And maybe Jaquan Johnson's that 11th defender. I think that there's some talent when you talk about a Terrell Bernard, a Jaquan Johnson, a Christian Benford. Do they try to get creative with that 11th defender if something happened to Taron Johnson? Obviously,
we don't want that.
We get awesome snaps. We get Trey White back. We get Taron Johnson in there. Everything's easy, and that's the way to go. But just could be interesting if they
for sure. And Johnson's had some durability issues so far in his career. So these are definitely things that Sean McDermott's having conversations about.
Yeah, absolutely. Safety is another real easy one, I assume.
This is super easy for me.
Micah Hyde, Jordan Poyer, Jaquan Johnson, Damar Hamlin. I will say I was on the camp of Damar Hamlin over Jaquan Johnson, and I think I probably have to take an L there. It looks pretty clearly that Jaquan Johnson is the first guy off the bench and the first opportunity and a defined safety 3, and that I kind of thought Damar Hamlin might take that role from him.
I feel like, to me, I've paid a lot of attention these last 2 games to both those safeties. And I agree with you that if one of those guys go down, I think Johnson's going to get that next space in safety 3. But to me, they've played actually. This was something you and I talked about before the preseason, and you had some concerns about the future of the safety position and the backup safety position. To me, watching these guys play, I feel pretty good about the Bills' backup situation being one of the better backup safety positions in the league. Like, these guys.
Heck, we didn't even mention Josh Thomas. He's actually a decent player.
He is a decent player, but Hamlin and Johnson, to me, have such a feel of Poyer and Hyde. It's not the same. They're not quite as athletic. They're not quite as good yet, but it feels very similar to me, and they play off each other very well. You can tell that they've gotten a lot of reps in together, and they're interchangeable in a lot of the same ways. You saw Hamlin a little bit more up in the box in this last game. I think Johnson has stood out a little bit more because he had more big plays in the box in that first game, and came up and made some big plays and got his hands on some balls. But Hamlin was doing a good job in that Micah Hyde role, and you didn't see any big deep shots coming. So he didn't really get a chance to make much for plays on the ball, but he was it looked like Poyer and Hyde out there to me. So I'm very confident that the both of them are developing in the right way, and they're going on the right trajectory. I don't know if they'll be able to keep both of them going into the future, but for me right now, I feel really good about the backup safety position, and I'm starting to feel good about the future of the position, where we haven't seen anything happen with Jordan Poyer yet. This could be a one and done for him. This could be a let's play out this contract and best of luck to you. Hopefully we part ways with the Super Bowl is how they might be looking at it. And if that's the case, I wouldn't have felt good about that a couple months ago. I'm feeling a little bit better about that right now, that at least there's some developmental talent in that pool that looks pretty good, that even in this year, if we need it in a pinch, it's good, and it could be good into the future.
Yeah, I think it's very much a possibility, and that we'll see where it comes in. But these tough decisions are a big part of it. And a quick question here from Steve Noble. So one, just a clarification: the rules for the NFL physically unable to perform list did change. It used to be 6 weeks, now it's 4 weeks. And Steve brings up a good point here. If you're placed on the physically unable to perform list, it means you have not passed the physical.
Right.
That means you cannot practice.
Right.
So
Anything.
you cannot practice. You can be, I think you could be in the room.
You can be rehabbing in the
rehabbing. You can be
Right.
working out on the side, on the bike on the side. You could be in the position rooms doing film work and talking with the team. You can't do any reps in practice, no team activities. So, that's a factor. And I talked about, I kind of did my breakdown is between week 2 and week 3. If they think there's any possibility he could play week 1, obviously he's going to be back. Week 2 is 11 days after. It's a Monday night game after a previous Thursday night game. It's 11 days later. If they think it's possible he could play week 2, they're just going to activate him. He's going to make the 53-man roster. If it's already beyond there and it gets to week 3 or week 4 and it's a maybe, they're not sure. It might be week 3. It might be week 4. Now you get into, well, is having 4 guaranteed weeks of Nick McLeod better than maybe 1 game of trying to come back Trey White? That's debatable. It might be better. Any single snap of Trey White is better than 4 weeks of Nick McLeod.
Sure.
But that's where the debate's going to come in. The challenge is what Steve brings up here. If they do the pup and that means that gives them a free 53-man roster spot, it means his very first practice is that Tuesday coming back from week 4. And then is it realistic he could have 3 practices and play week 5? So, it's possible. I'm not saying it can't happen. That's a Sunday 1:00 game at home against the Steelers. But realistically, they might give him that week to ramp back up and then try to activate him for week 6 against the Chiefs. So if you do pup, it may be asking for 5 weeks out and not just 4. Whereas if he makes the 53, even though they know he's not going to be ready week 1 or week 2, now you can ease him in week 3 in practice, play him week 4 where it's limited snaps, and then back to starting week 5. Like you have more options, but it costs you that 53-man roster spot the whole time. And whether they do pup or make the 53 and then IR, it's 4 weeks either way. So either he makes the 53 or he can't do anything until after week 4.
Yeah, I mean, I have just sort of assumed this was how it's going to play out for him, that it would be on the pup and then whenever he is ramped up enough, which I don't know what that number, I know that Sean McDermott had talked about that they have a plan in place for how much he needs to do before he's playing. I don't know what that is, but for me, it was whatever that is beyond those 4 weeks on the pup. I think that they're just going to have to find a way to get through it. The Bills are, in my opinion, are going to roll on a conservative way with this. I think that
December and January and February is what matters.
It's going to matter more, right? They've always talked about it that way, and they braced through a tough stretch of the schedule last year without Trey White, and were able to just get through it. And obviously, it didn't end up in the end, but they want to make sure that Trey's there in the end. So I think they're going to play this conservative. And I feel like if it was going to be something where he was in play for a potential week 1 or week 2, that we would start to see that ramp up kind of here, where we would see him starting to get into the team activities, because really we're 14 days tomorrow. It's 14 days away. So we're already in the 2-week window away from that week 1, where I don't see him ramping up at any point. We haven't really heard rumblings that's ramping up. Actually, the Trey White news is kind of just dissipated over the last couple of weeks. We don't really know where he's at.
Completely silent.
Yeah, and that concerns me, that it's a little bit silent, and I think they're going to remain conservative with him at this point. So I'm not expecting to see till mid-October, late October, Trey White.
Yeah, I think that's the smarter way for all of us to approach it. Obviously, both
and
Aaron
it's
and I
after they do get him on, it's 21 days.
They have up to 21 days to activate him off PUP before you activate him to the roster. If you start the practice window and don't activate him after 21 days, he goes on season-ending IR. Right. So no team would start the window if you weren't going to activate him.
Well, so that's the other thing,
that doesn't
right?
ever really come up.
Yeah, if they don't want to put him on the pup, right? And then it ends up actually taking him that long. That's going to be a bad move if the rehab doesn't go along as they think it is, as he does ramp up. So I'll be interested to see how this plays out. But I think it's exactly what you and I predicted right when the start of this happened, which was go on pup, and sometime here in the mid to late October, we'd start to see him.
Yeah. So we'll see where that goes.
Which would still be a fantastic recovery, by the way. I think that's one thing we need to pull back a little bit. We see all these recoveries from all these injuries. If Trey White comes back before Thanksgiving and is playing in NFL football, what an amazing medical job by that
incredible.
doctor.
It's incredible.
It really is.
So obviously then the specialists are very easy with the team decided it for us. Tyler Bassmatter as a Reed Ferguson. So that's super easy.
What a swaggy specialist group.
Fun.
They've got a lot of confidence.
So just kind of talking through what were your last debates here? Mine, obviously, it was Bobby Hart, Balen Spector, Nick McLeod, and Quentin Morris. Like those were like my last guys. Isaiah Hodgins, like those 5 guys. And I had 3 spots, and I ended up going with, even if Trey is there, I actually think it would be Isaiah Hodgins who would get bumped. I don't think, if he's active, I think that if he's kind of like the pseudo active and on the roster, but he's not really going to play, I think they might also still keep either McLeod or Lewis, whoever that 10th DB is. I think they want 10 DBs to be able to be there. And if they know Trey is kind of pretend active for 2 or 3 weeks, I think they might keep him anyways. Who are the ones that you won't be surprised by? That's a name that's out there.
Yeah, for me, it was obviously me taking Hart. It was a Hodgins or Hart on the offensive side of the ball, and I went with Hart. That might be me just kind of reading into the drumbeat around Hart a little too much. I'm not sure if I'm just taking the recency bias of that into it. And I am a little bit pumping the brakes on Hodgins' production this preseason. I liked it. I'm happy for him. I'm happy we finally got to see him play in real NFL. I would love to be able to keep him and develop him on this roster. I think that he provides something going into the future that the Bills are actually going to need, which is more that length and a boundary type guy, a solid catch type guy. So I like all the things he offers, but I'm definitely lower on him, I think, than most people. And I'm not worried about losing.
Really smart comment.
He needed a healthy offseason before he got Shakir to actually make this roster. Yeah.
He waited too long. He waited too long to have
NFL passes you by, man. And that is true, because if Shakir wasn't here, easy. Let's keep him. I don't want to lose him. We need more.
He would be that sixth receiver and the guy who could play both in the slot and the backup outside. Yeah. But now Shakir can do that. Plus,
you're resetting that rookie deal. You're resetting the rookie deal with a guy that's got a clean bill of health. I just think we get to this point in this preseason. We've seen a bunch of guys make plays, and we've fallen in love with these stories, and your Blackshears and your Hodgins, and even Hart kind of winning some fans over this year. But at the end of the day, these are all bottom of the roster guys, and nothing against them. Like, to be in the NFL is an incredible thing. You are the top of the world.
Might be different. Bottom of our roster. The Bills are in a great. If this was the Atlanta Falcons, if this was the Jaguars, those guys might be fighting for some snaps.
Sure, but I still think league wide on average, these are barely rosterable players that we're talking about at this point in their career. Like they're guys that are going to be bubble guys on most teams in the league.
Yeah, they're not walking in and starting on other teams.
Right. Yeah, and they're in the if they were in another team's training camp, they're in this conversation. I think still that cut down day is it Hodgins or whoever on the Giants or whatever. I don't think that these guys are going to any other teams and making huge differences. I like them. I hope to see all of them continue to develop with the Buffalo Bills. But yeah, I'm not going to lose sleep over any of these guys. And so I think people are going to get real upset on Cutdown Day that some of their favorite preseason guys weren't there. But remember the Brandon Rileys. Remember some of these guys that we've done this with in the past, and they ended up back and didn't have great success in the NFL, and that's okay. Like you still stand for those guys. It's all right.
It'll still be a fun story. It doesn't mean that it was some, I think when people go too far is that, it's this hidden superstar that's going to break out. And
everyone's worried about the next,
the
Wyatt Teller. Yeah. We should come out Wyatt Teller syndrome where like, he's going to go off and be an all pro somewhere else. And maybe, I actually hope it for all these. I hope Cody Ford goes and unlocks what Brandon Beane saw in him, because honestly, that'll justify it for me that Brandon Beane's smarter and we just could have developed the player. But I do want everyone that leaves the Buffalo Bills. Yeah, I want everyone that leaves the Buffalo Bills to have that success. That it doesn't have to be both things.
Yeah. So here is a quick comment to kind of change where Steve is going. The practice squad scare you to death. The Giants. So the important thing is the Bills are going to keep the 53 best players. Anybody who can get claimed and is on our practice squad wasn't one of our best 53 players.
Yeah.
Who are 54th to 69th player, those 16 guys on the practice squad, okay. Like the Bills also have
They
draft
go
grades.
through those guys all year too.
We churn them all the time.
Oh, there's
the
a
Bills
thunderstorm out my door. You might hear it. Sorry.
Nice. The Bills had a draftable grade on all kinds of guys that other teams picked up that are going to get cut that they might pick up onto their practice squad. There's no concern. The Bills happen to have 60 roster caliber players. The Duke Johnson could be on an NFL roster. Heck, Joe Giles Harris could be on an NFL roster. Tommy Sweeney can be on an NFL roster. It won't be ours. It's not going to be good enough to make our roster, but that doesn't mean that, oh, if they get picked up off the practice squad, oh no, what are we going to do? Yeah, we're going to keep the best 53-man roster in the NFL. That's what we're going to do. There's no concern here. There's no worry. There's nothing to wring your hands over.
Would we rather keep all of our favorite players?
Sure.
Yeah, absolutely. But this is the NFL, man.
course.
Honestly, and the Bills are probably going to add some talent that we didn't see coming on the practice squad that next year is going to stand out. Like all these guys are replaceable level players.
Yeah.
They're all... There's other fun stories in the NFL that you can go get these guys. Yeah, I think we just have to we got to do a better job as a fan base, especially, I know Twitter's not real life, but on Twitter, putting things in context and putting things properly where they need to be. It's okay to celebrate the successes of these players in preseason and be happy for them. It doesn't mean that they're rosterable players that need to take somebody else's job.
I root for Neil Pau. I root for Tanner Gentry. They're fun people. If they get claimed, it's okay. All right, best of luck. I hope it goes well for you.
Absolutely.
We're going to be fine. We're going to go win ourselves 15 games here.
Yes.
So, all right. We have now come to the end. Before we close out, make sure you guys are taking a look at it. Our Cover One Pass, make sure that you're looking at it. It's an awesome opportunity. If you want a chance to support us, if you enjoyed tonight's show, the reason we have the time and resources and all the different, things that we're able to go in and look up to be able to have those resources and logins that we have for all the other resources is because you guys help pay for that for us to be able to do this work and put together this content that we're able to provide these things. So if you want this awesome t-shirt and our decal to join the Slack channel and everything there, become a One Pass member, become an insider. It is the best way to support us.
Yeah, absolutely. I actually had a bunch of buddies recently add on, and they were doing it just because they were friends and they wanted to support it. But they're like, "Hey, man, you guys!" I was just over at one of my friends' houses, and he was like, "Hey, the content's fantastic. You guys are killing it." So, really happy with what Eric and the whole team have been able to put together here. I'm enjoying the content. I hope that you're getting in it, enjoying it too, because this is going to be a really fun season. And we keep referring back to that 57 price and a run to Super Bowl 57. But for guys like us that have been making content about the Bills, this is the absolute best time. This is going to be a very fun season full of fantastic content, big games, and everybody's going to want to be paying attention. You're going to want to be in on this inside access information. So make sure you get on it. And like Greg said, it helps keep everything going and keeping that content flowing for you guys.
And beyond there, everyone can give us a like, give us a rating, give us a review. Free. Go and check out there. It's free to like this show right now. You can go and press that like button right now.
And it actually helps a lot.
It's free to do that. And that really does. I mean, actually, the crazy algorithms and things like that, it helps other people find the show. So that would mean a lot to us.
Yeah.
But, everything else going on, make sure you're checking out all the other shows on the channel. We are going to be back here for you, getting ready to preview what's going on. But next week, we have a fun live show. We're going to be out at Uncle Jumbo's on Friday night, September 2nd with Tim Graham coming to have some drinks with us. We're going to do a live show from there talking about, leading right up to the season and having a good time and a final get together with Bills Mafia before we dive into this season. So you can come check us out next week on Friday, September 2nd at Uncle Jumbo's with Tim Graham, having a good time. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Absolutely. I'm really looking forward to that. Summer's coming to an end here, Greg. It's all wrapping up. It is.
My daughter had her first day of school today.
I know. Congratulations there. Yeah, my kid, it will be right after Labor Day. They're going back, and I can't wait. I'm actually sick of my children. I'm ready for them to go back to school. I love my kids so much, but they need to go back to school. But I can't wait for August to be over. It's hot. It's muggy. Hopefully, knock on your beautiful mahogany, the Bills continue to have the nice pristine preseason. We can ride right into this Rams game and start off this campaign. I'm so excited to get to this point, Greg, and I'm excited to enjoy this journey of another season with you, man.
Can't wait. I can't wait for it. Thank you guys. The chat was awesome tonight. You guys were fantastic. It's been a great show. But on behalf of Aaron Quinn, I'm Greg Tompsett. You've been listening to Cover One Buffalo.